Thanks to all my supporters. Links are down in the description below if you want to support the channel. Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of this green screen visual effects tutorial series. In the previous tutorials, we have modeled out this city and then did some camera tracking, and now we are actually ready to go ahead and do some shading and then materials inside Blender. If you haven't watched the previous 3, links are down below, but let's go and get started. So if we come out of the camera, and then let's go into rendered view, you will see that everything is very gray and non-existent. And first of all, that's because of we are on Eevee. And second of all, we don't have any lighting in our scene. So let's go ahead and change it to cycles. And then we're gonna do GPU compute. I'm gonna keep my sampling on 64 right now. Make sure that adaptive sampling is on. Denoising, we can do it on the viewport. So that is looking good. And then the light paths, everything should be set to 3. Right here, so just make sure that all these are set to 3. The caustics, you can just turn both of those off right there, and then we can hit simplify, and then for the performance, we're just going to set 512 by 512 because we're on a GPU. Okay, so now we have all of that out of the way, but our scene is still looking very bland, and that's because we don't have any lighting in our scene. Now for this, we're just going to keep it super simple and just do an HDRI. So let's come up to the shading tab, go into world instead of object, and then we're just going to add in environment texture. Then just plug the color into the color of there. And then I'm just going to open up a HDRI. Link is down below if you want to go download that. Okay, so now that we have that, let's just go back into rendered mode and see what this is looking like. So this is looking a lot better right now. However, we can still see the background of the HDRI. So let's come over here to film and then transparent and turn that on. And now we can just see transparency. Okay, so the lighting is actually looking pretty good for what I want to use it for, so I'm not really going to change around anything, so we can just go ahead and hop back into Object. Now I do want a sky in our world, so to do that, let's go ahead and add that in. I'm having some clipping issues, so let's just hit in, come to View, then let's just put this in to be something crazy like that. And now let's just add a little sphere to act as our sky, so I'm just going to add a Mesh UV sphere, then let's go into Solid View. Just gonna position this up, just scale that up a bit, just so it encompasses our whole city. Let's come to the top view and then Z. I just want this to kind of encompass the whole city like this. And to save on some render time and everything, we can actually just disable this side. So I'm just gonna select this side in edit mode and then delete the faces like that. Okay, so now we just have a simple sphere for our city like that. We actually need to project a sky texture onto it. So first of all, let's shade smooth real quick, and then we're going to add a new material. I'm going to name this sky just so we can start organizing some stuff. And then with our sky texture, I'm just going to come down here, add a image texture node. We can actually get rid of this principal BSDF since I don't want shading to affect it at all. And then color to the surface. And then let's just go ahead and come to render first of all. And then open up our image. Okay, so here is the image. Again, the link to that is down in the description below. So it's just a basic sky texture. Let's actually come over here, and if you have the Node Wrangler add-on, let's come up to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and then just type in Node Wrangler right here. Just make sure that's enabled. And with that enabled, we can now hold Control and press T, and that will give us a texture coordinate and mapping node. So that is looking good. With that, we can actually play around with the rotation of it. So let's just come into the camera and see what it's looking like. We actually can't see the sky right now, and that's because the camera clipping is set to be too low. So let's select the camera up here, come down to the clip starting in, and I'm just going to set my clip in to be something crazy. And there we go. Now we can see the sky. So yeah, you can just rotate it however you want. I just want to get some contrast in the sky, so it's darker over here and lighter over here. So that is looking pretty good. So that is the sky now finished. And so one final thing that I want to make sure is to come over here to the object properties, come down to visibility, and we want to make sure that it doesn't affect our shadow, transmission, glossy, all that. We just want it to affect our diffuse, and that's just because we don't want this to cast shadows on our city. Now let's go ahead and do some of the buildings inside of our scene. So I'm just going to select this building over here. Now, first of all, let's come over here, and I want to make sure I have 2 different materials for this one object. And so to do that, we can create our first material. I'm going to name this white because we're going to be using this a lot in our scene. Okay, so once we have that, we can actually go ahead and add in a new material, and we're going to name this one Windows, like that. So now if we select this whole object, you should see that it's set to be white right here. However, we want individual faces to be different materials. So to do that, let's just select all the faces that we want to be a specific material. So in our case, we want these faces right here that I just selected to be windows. And then if we select this windows material over here, we can hit assign. And now all the faces that we just selected are now windows, and all the other ones are white. Okay, we can leave the white material for now. Let's go to Windows right over here, and we need to play around with some stuff. So first of all, to get our window texture, we're actually going to use a brick material. So brick texture, you can just type that in. And with the Node Wrangler add-on, you can hold Shift, Control, and click and go into the different things. So color and factor. Okay, so you'll notice once we view that, we have this weird little thing that's happening right now. And that's actually because we don't have any vector going in right here. So what we need to do is let's select this brick texture. Again, hold Control T to add a texture coordinate mapping node. And instead of the generated coordinates that we want to use, we actually want to use a UV. So let's plug that into the vector. And you should notice that the UV is very wonky, and that's actually because we haven't unwrapped it yet. So let's hit Tab to go into edit mode, hit A to select everything, then U to unwrap. And then we're going to do it by cube projection. And since it is a nice cubed building, we actually get a pretty good result. Okay, so now we can see that the brick is behaving how we want it to. We basically want to make these act like windows. So what we can do is play around with some of these values. Let's just set the scale up a bit. Something like this. That looks pretty good. We'll say right there. So that is what I'm going to stick with. Now we want to use this as displacement to give us a little bit more geometry. Or the illusion of geometry, I should say. So let's plug the factor into the height and then place that into the displacement. And then let's give that a view if we plug our BSDF into here. Okay, so now if I zoom in, you can see that that's basically creating the illusion of windows. So that is looking good. Okay, so now we basically want to have two different materials for the window and then the window seal. So what we're going to do is create two principled BSDFs. So I'm just going to Shift D this down. Here now we have two different things, and we need to combine them with a mix shader, like so, and then we can just plug these in here. And then for the sake of viewing it, I'm going to make one red and the other one white, just so we can see what's going on. And let's see what that looks like. You can see that's basically just crush the two colors together, and we can actually change it around with this factor. However, we want the factor to be related to the windows. So what we can do is take this brick texture that we have down here, bring the brick texture just up right here, just so we can see that a bit easier. And then let's plug the factor into the factor of our mix shader. And now you'll see that all of the white is where the window is going to be, and then the red is where the window sill is going to be. Okay, so for the window sill, I know I want it to be the same color as our building. So I'm just going to set it to be white, like that. Just push that up and that down. So that is going to be white. And then for this up here, I know I want this to be kind of like a reflective black color. So actually I'm going to make it a little bit blue and then make it a little darker like that. Let's actually come out of here just so I can view this a little bit easier. Then the specular, we can bring that up. And the roughness, we'll actually control the roughness with a Musgrave texture to give it a little bit more detail. So Musgrave right here, the height into the roughness. And then let's just view what that looks like. Again, Shift Control to click to view that. Then let's just bring the scale up, something like that. The detail we can turn up as well. Then the dimensions we can turn down just a little bit. And now let's see what that looks like. Okay, so you can see that gives us a lot of detail on the windows. However, it's a little too much, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and add in a color ramp right here. And then to actually tone down some of the reflections, I'm going to change this black to be a lighter gray, just until I get kind of a result that I think looks pretty good, pretty subtle. Something like that, just so it's very subtle and kind of blends in. Okay, so here's our node setup so far. We have the white in our glass, and that's being combined in a mix shader, and that's being controlled by our brick texture. And then we have this little displacement node right here that's basically giving us some fake geometry and giving us some more detail on our scene. Okay, so cool. Now that that is done, we can actually go ahead and move on to our other thing, the white color. Now for this white, if all the buildings are this white, it's kind of going to be a little bit boring. It's going to be a little bit samey. So I want to give kind of a range that the buildings can randomly choose between to be a different shade of white. So let's add a color ramp node. This is basically going to allow us to select different colors. So if I select this one over here and change this from black to, let's say, a lighter gray, like that, so just barely white, like that. Now we have a range from this gray value all the way to this white. And so what we can do is every object that is spawned gets a random value. So we're going to add in a object info node, and that's going to give us that random value. So right here, we're going to plug that into the factor. And basically that means that every object that is spawned is going to get a random color from this gray to this white color. Now let's go ahead and copy this. So Control C, and we're going to paste this in this Windows since we want the Windows cell to be that same little off-white color as before. So we're going to plug this color into the base color of our white window cell. Now if I come back over to this white, we do still want some detail in our scene. So I'm going to again just add a little bit of a Musgrave texture. And then we can do the same thing as before. I'm just going to plug it into the roughness. I'm going to just make the scale. We can we'll make the scale like that and then turn the detail up and dimensions down. Just add a little bit right there. And then again, it's a little too much, so we can add a color ramp and make this very gray. Like so. So now if we view it, we can barely notice it, and that is what I'm going for. So with that plugged into the roughness now, let's see what this is looking like. Okay, we can see it gives us a little bit of detail. Now I know I want all the buildings to kind of have this tiled effect. So what we can do is add in another brick texture, and then let's bring the factor up to the displacement and add a displacement node in between to convert this and plug this into the height. Okay, so now that gives it kind of like a little tiled effect. Again, we do want this to be affected by the UV. So again, Control T, get that texture coordinate and place the UV into the vector. Okay, so the tile sizes are a little too big. I don't want it to be that pronounced. So what I'm going to do is set the scale. Let's set the mortar size to be down a little bit. Let's try a 0.01. Okay, that looks alright. Let's try 0.005, just half that. Yeah, that looks a little better, just so we don't see them all the way throughout all the buildings. Okay, so one final thing that I'm going to do is create some dust and dirt buildup along the edges right here, because I think that gives a pretty cool effect. So what we can do is actually utilize the Ambient Occlusion node. So if I add this in, if I view this, all this is basically where any objects kind of fold into each other. So like right here, you can see that there's a lot of ambient occlusion. If I actually add in a color ramp node, just to view that a little bit easier, if I crunch the blacks, anywhere that there's basically 90 degrees or where an object would have some shadow from itself is where that is going to be. So what we can actually do is use that to our advantage and combine that with another Musgrave texture and give us some cool dirt effects. So let's go ahead and do that. So I have this right here. And then I need to add a Musgrave texture. I love the Musgrave texture if you have it figured out already. And then with these two, let's scale this down a bit. Something like this. And then let's detail up, dimension down again. So that is looking cool. But I want to combine these two things into one. So let's add in a mix RGB node instead of shader. Then we can, instead of mix, let's try overlay right here. Then if I plug these in here, like so, there we go. So it just gives us a little bit of a dirt buildup along building and edges and stuff. That's a little too much for my liking, so I'm going to tone it down like that. Maybe make this gray just a tad, something like that. And so now this gives us this cool effect. However, we do need to affect something. So let's add a mix shader node. I'm going to plug that there. And our first shader is going to be our white. And we actually need to create another color to be our other material. So I'm just going to come up here. I know I kind of want this to be kind of a darker brown. So let's darken that up and just do a dark brown like that. Okay, so for the other shader, I'm just going to bring this down here real quick. And then we can plug this into the other shader socket. And then we can shift control click that to see what that looks like. Oh, we need to add our overlay to the factor. And that should give us a result. Actually, we need to switch them. Whoops. And so yeah, so that just gives us a little bit of dust buildup and stuff. I actually might mess around with this Musgrave texture. I don't know if I'm in love with that. Yeah, so just a subtle little dirt effect on some things just to give it that much more realism in our scene. Okay, so just to walk through that again, we basically took this ambient occlusion and combined it with a Musgrave texture to be our factor for a mix shader. And that mix shader basically controls the brown and the white, and that will just affect the edges of some buildings. Okay, so I spent so long on those two shaders just because we're going to be using that a lot throughout our scene. So let's go ahead and put that on some of the other buildings. Okay, so let's get out of here. Let's come back over here to our main buildings. Now for this one, if you guys remember in our previous tutorial, we actually set the materials to be something else before, and so that is where this comes in. So let's select this object. Now we can see that I have set this white to be this over here, however that is actually wrong. So this material right here, if we just change the color a little bit, that's actually affecting our panels, and we need this one to be the white texture. So what I can do is just set this to be white, and so this one we can just exit out of here. And then this one we need to be our windows material right here. And it's giving you this weird effect right now, and that's actually because we haven't UV unwrapped it. So let's go ahead and do that. Hit A, Q projection, and there we go. Now everything is wrapped correctly. Okay, so now one problem that we are seeing is that on one side of the building, the windows are facing up and down, and the other side they're facing across like that. So we actually do need to change that, and so what we can do to change that is to come first of all into solid view, and then let's actually come here to the side view just so we can see the front of our thing. Now if we go into material preview, we can see a rough estimation. Now these windows are faced the wrong way, so we actually need to rotate these. So what we can do, I'm just going to go into edit mode. Let's unselect everything, and then just right here let's go into face select, and then just drag and click all these down here on this side, and then B to select the rest. Like that. So now we only have the specific side of our actual thing selected. Now let's actually come down here, move out this window, and instead of the image editor, we need to do UV editor. And then it's as simple as selecting A down here to select everything, and then we're going to rotate that on the X 90 degrees. And now everything has been rotated, and now our windows are facing the right way. Okay, so it's the same process for the back side as well. Let's actually just go ahead and hide this just so we can see it a little bit better, and this as well, might as well. So let's do that same thing. Select the building, go into edit mode, unselect everything, then 3, and then click and drag to select all the faces on this side. Then A, rotate 90 degrees like that, and now all the windows are facing the right way. Okay, so that is pretty much it for this building. However, the top does have some windows right here, so let's just manually set this to be the white texture. So for these up here, I'm just going to unselect everything. And then if I hit C, I can actually just click and drag around to select all the ones that need to be the white material. Now there are a lot of others that we can set to be white, but this is going to be so unnoticeable that we don't really notice anything right here. So like all these things right here, we can just leave. We're not really going to notice it. But all I did was come up here, select our white thing, and then assign that to be the correct one. Okay, so this building is now modeled out. Let's actually Alt-H to unhide everything, go back into our camera, and now you can see all of the buildings on our particle system has actually updated. Now I'm not going to show you guys how I did all of the buildings just because it's basically the same setup as before, but I will show you one or two other more examples. Okay, so I'm going to hide this particle system in sky again just so we're working with these buildings right here. So for this, we're going to add a new material and set that to be white again. And then we want to set a windows material as well. And then we just want to select the parts that we want to be windows. Okay, so we just want to select all the faces that we want to be windows. So I'm just going to select that, hold shift, and then just select all the other windows. Now this is a pretty tedious process because we have to go around all of the buildings. But you just want to select this. This is really the only way I think we can do it. But yeah, we just want to select all the faces that we want to be windows, and I will be back. Okay, so I have selected all the faces that I want to be our windows. So let's come over here, select the windows, and then hit assign. And now they are all assigned. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. Everything looks to be UV wrapped correctly, so we don't really have to worry about that. However, some of these are giving us this little error. So let's come over here, down to the UV. Let's scale. Let's try on the X. We just want to scale on the X until we don't see those anymore. You can come to the different sides and make sure that none of them are really visible too bad, like they're not in the middle. So that looks pretty good. So that's the finished material for this building. Okay, so for our last example, I just wanted to do the most complicated building just to show you. Now, if you remember in our previous tutorial, we set the different colors right here. So for this, we want to set it to be our white color. So let's set that. And then for this, we can actually do a new thing. And so what we can do is we're just going to do that color ramp randomized thing again. So plug the color ramp into our base color. And then we need a object info node to give us a random value. So plug that in there. And then what we can do here is just have some fun and set some random colors. So I might start off at, I don't know, some red. Can add some in here. Let's add, I don't know, let's try some orange. Let's add another one. This one can be green. We'll just go around the color wheel, just doing some random colors. So just have some fun with this. And what that does is if we go ahead and duplicate this, we can see that every time we duplicate it, it'll give us a random color for that. So no building is ever the same. So let's just delete those and model out the rest of this. So in here, I know I kind of want like a kind of red effect, I guess. So I'm just going to select these little panels in here. Like so, add a new material. Just going to call this red and make it red. Just that simple. And then of course nothing has happened because we haven't assigned it like so. So just to give us a nice little red color, we can make the specular down and roughness up just so it doesn't reflect that much. And then finally over here, let's just select some of these to kind of be the windows. So if I have this top one selected, I can actually hold control and select this bottom one, and it'll find the shortest path to that. So then I can set this one. We actually need to set a new material, and we're gonna make this our Windows material and assign that right there. And then we're gonna do the same thing over here. Click that, control click the bottom, and then assign that to be Windows. Now these are kind of weird over here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cube project, I guess, and then do the same over here. Select those, cube project. And now we can change those how we like, even though they're actually pretty good right now, so I'm just going to keep it as is. The final thing that I want to do is add a bit of black in this, maybe, just to give kind of a cool effect. So what I am going to do is add a new material. I'm just going to name this black, like so. Make this black, and let's set the top to be kind of this black color, just to give us more variation in color. Just going to play around with it. Honestly, you can't really do anything bad unless it looks bad to you, so just play around with it. And that's looking like a pretty cool building. Let's go into rendered view, just see what that's looking like. Yeah, so that looks pretty cool. Might just keep it like that. Just play around with it, just have some fun. Okay guys, so that is the basic setup of how to texture this scene. I'm actually going to go ahead and texture the rest of the stuff off camera and show you guys the final result. Okay guys, so I did some more texture work and was able to get just some more interesting stuff in our city. We can see that we have some red accents on these buildings over here. And then this one is just black, since in my render specifically I didn't really see it that much, so I didn't really spend too much time modeling that out. You can maybe see it, I believe, right here, but like I said, it's not noticeable at all. So depending on what variation you got in your particle system, you might not have to shade something that intensely just because you don't see it that much in your scene. Now, quick side note I didn't tell you guys about is this metal texture. I can actually just show you that real quick. But all that is just a metallic principled BSDF, and then Musgrave texture like we did before, controlling the roughness, just to give it kind of like a water effect. And then one final thing that I almost forgot to tell you guys is that the floor plane of this, I actually just looked on Google of a top-down street view, so I used that as a kind of tile texture on here. And since we don't really focus on it or see it that much, we can kind of just almost see it like right here, and that's about it. And as long as that looks about correct, I think it's fine. Yeah, I just projected that to be on this little plane emitter object. Okay guys, so that's going to do it for our shading part of this tutorial series. We have one part to go, and that is going to be compositing, so make sure you guys like and subscribe for that. Anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.